down, talk about this. This is a great forum and great brainstorming. So earlier on, we heard from a few other people, Guy, for one, who actually did a great job. And it actually rolls into what we're talking about with the cost and where cost is actually directed. And the big thing with us is, how can we build something for $300,000? And is it possible? Right now, we'll say it is. You can do it, but there's so many factors that go into building a tower. We're going to go over it over the next 30 minutes. But we want to make sure that things are, that we're meeting certain expectations, and everyone knows exactly the hurdles that we have to go through to make these things happen. Okay. So this list here, I'm not going to go down the list, but this actually took us a couple weeks to create. We tried hitting the major points, and we actually met with Senator Chang a couple times, brainstorming, trying to get through what he did in his Singapore trip, as well as what Mike and I are seeing, or what we have seen over the many years here in Hawaii. And it's a lot of these are things that, as we go down, we're going to hit further into, but we're very passionate about them, and we know that every one of them has a certain place when designing. Planning and programming, huge. This is the first big step that we make. So where do you want this tower to be? One, you need it to be close to mass transit. You want buses, bikes, people that work close by, high density areas. You really want to create communities. That's what this is doing. Very tight knit, like we said, high density. And you want to bring people in. You could build a tower 50 miles away, but if it's not convenient for people, regardless of price, a lot of people will not purchase. So we want to make something that is convenient to people, building community, building something nice. Then we look into mix of unit. What do people need? What do they want? Again, what's going to bring them in? A typical tower, you got studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. Typically, you're trying to even them out, getting into what Guy was saying with the pricing. And the percentages that I have up there is something that I've seen historically are throughout the towers. You limit your 3 bedrooms, they're harder to sell. You want to do 2 bedrooms because they pay for the project, but yet they're also harder to sell. Studios and 1s go very, very quick. In a higher density building like this, you want to put mainly studios and 1 bedrooms. That's sort of your demographic. Those are the people that you're bringing in. But you do need the 2 bedrooms. 1, again, to pay for the project. 2, there are going to be people here moving in with families. And families don't live in 1-bedroom units. I know they do in Hong Kong and overseas, but here we're trying to create something that, again, is more communal, more family. Okay, so I know this is a touchy topic, but when you're looking at building height, you really have to ask yourself, how high can you go? What's the limit? And when you're looking at cost per square foot, you always want to maximize height. The higher you go, the lower the cost per gross square foot goes. A lot of the cost of these towers is actually in the base of the tower. They're very inefficient. You look at deep foundations, everything is down there. So when you start building up, you're building air, just open spaces. I'll tell you, the easiest things to build are living rooms and bedrooms in towers. There's nothing, carpet. So, we look at, the limit right now is 400 feet. Again, this is touchy, but if you look at 500 feet or 600 feet for these buildings, you're gaining 25%, 40%. Of units that can go in there. And this really helps out, 1, financing, and 2, it gives more homes, builds more homes for people, and that's what we're looking for. There are negatives that come along with going higher. 1 is elevators. More people, more elevators, the higher they are, the faster they gotta go. I don't know if anyone's been in the Empire State Building in New York. Those move at 1,600 square feet per minute. The ones that you see in Hawaii are typically 750s. I mean, it's a huge difference. And it's costly along with, just adding more. Views, placements, another big issue. You don't want to block the people behind you. You want to leave the corridors. But that's something that you just have to work out, work with the community, make sure that these buildings are placed correctly. And also the shape of the buildings. We're going to go into that later. That plays a huge impact on costs. Amenities. So you want to keep association dues low. That's the key. Again, these are affordable. So then you think to yourself, what do you want in these buildings? From the past buildings that I've been involved with, Mike's been involved with, and a lot of people in here actually been involved with, you know what the amenities that are used most are. You got people that build in saunas and steam rooms in these units, but they're hardly ever used. Community rooms, theaters, exercise rooms. These are the high volume rooms that are always there. Private dining is also a big one that people rent out a lot. So I think we need to capitalize on what's really used. Not just build something because it's neat and you want it there just in case. That changes a little bit of the architecture theory, but it's something that we should think about. Also exterior cabanas. That's one thing that I found in the last couple of years people want. It's huge. They want outside, they want to cook, they want to grill, they want to enjoy outdoor life. And knowing that a lot of these units will not have barbecues, you can't put things on lanais if there is a lanai. Outside on a rec deck is a good place just to commingle and grill out. Pools, again, costly, maintenance. They're not used as much as people think. And a lot of times they're broken down, it's not heated, and there's problems with them. So do you really want one is a big question again, that it all depends on budget, but a pool, I've seen some affordables with, some without. Timing, everything. So the idea is that we need to get through the process faster, move efficient, which basically saves costs for everybody. Now I know that we need to find ways to expedite through design, pricing, permitting, which is a big issue right now. But because of that, we need to build partnerships with the state, DPP, designers. I'm gonna go further into that later. But partnerships is a huge part of making these successful and actually being built. If you have an affordable component or affordable tower that drags on for years, you're going to miss a window for financing, you're going to miss a window for material pricing, contractor pricing, everything. So timing is everything. Fast, fast, fast. And then last, variances. Limit the variances that you go for. Because a lot of them are touchy, a lot of them will not get passed. So try to be strategic in what you really want to go for and what benefits the project. Parking. This is something that actually we talked about in depth with Senator Chang when he was in Singapore, is that maybe we limit the parking. If we're building a community and we're building a home, or we're building retail there, where jobs are there, the stores that are there are convenient, the mom and pop shops, the need for parking is less. And again, they're affordable buildings, so maybe people can go in these and can afford, they don't need one. Then you look at ride sharing, big thing now, where the AOAO or the state, whoever runs the program there, can actually put 30 cars into a couple stalls, and everyone lives up in the building just shares them. It's starting to become a big thing on the mainland in some of the big cities. So I think this is something that we should seriously look at when we're looking at affordable. Ground level heavy retail. Again, you could do 1, 2 floors. The picture I have up there right now is Hong Kong. And when you start going down, looking at the communities that they have in Hong Kong, was it Shenzhen, Guangzhou, a lot of the people are out on the street. A lot of the people are walking with these huge towers next to them. So if everything is there, the nightlife should build up. People should be able to walk out and do what they want. Design. So my first 8 years were spent as a designer. So it's something I'm very passionate about. And I think this form right here is a great thing to kick off where you try something new. And this is what we're talking about here, is to build these buildings for this cost, you have to change the rules. You have to change your typical approach to buildings. Typical approach is you design, you bid, you value engineer, and you build. You lose time, you lose everything. And the cost that you get when general contractors give money back, sorry, Mike, it's normally not the money that if you bid it the first time, it's there. It just becomes a harder process. So the idea is if you flipped the whole design process on its head, what would happen? Don't design from the outside in. Design from the inside out. Efficiency, cores, that's what you have to look at. It's all about efficiency. And I know that's not really what architects like. I was told once that the true architecture of a building is the exterior, but when we're looking at affordable, when we're looking at hitting a target, you've got to change the rules. With that, reverse engineering. Take the whole thing, break it down. How can you share systems? How can you get into the walls? How can everything work? Amount of exterior skin, less articulation. All these ins and outs of buildings that you see when we go down to Honolulu, you see them moving all around. All that is square footage, all that is cost. It gets extremely expensive, especially when the exterior skin is one of the most expensive scopes on a project these days. And a lot of it does come in from overseas, so now you're paying tariffs on it. Putting together the right architectural team, like I put here extremely important, it is. They have to have the mindset, they have to have the belief, they have to have the drive. If you hire somebody such as Frank Gehry, this is never going to happen. He's going to go out there, he's going to design you the best building you could ever find. But it's never going to be efficient. And I think last time I looked at his record of design versus actually execution, when it came to private projects, it was low. When it came to public projects, it was high, because they just used the taxpayer money to pay for it. So again, looking at efficiencies. And then you look at, if you do have extra money, because again, you don't want buildings to look all the same, that's when you spend on the exterior to give it that wow factor. I'll show an example down the way of where one project in the US actually did that and did an amazing job at it. So here's two projects that you're thinking from the outside in. You've got a Gehry project on the left and a Bjarke Ingel project on the right. I've been lucky enough to work with Bjarke Ingel, and he's an amazing architect. But again, his projects aren't practical if you're looking to build for efficiency and cost. But they are amazing. Again, here's another angle we do not want to go, and this is Seoul, Korea, where it's pretty amazing how much they're building there. I actually walked down in some of their developments, and everything looks the same. It's just cookie cutter, one after another. And you don't want to do this. When I lived in Chicago, there was a development just south of Chicago that was just like this. It's now gone because of this very reason. But you want to look at making it look unique, and I don't think everyone here in Hawaii wants things to look the same. Here's a project that I talked about. This is the Aqua in Chicago. Amazing project, incredibly simple. All it is a rectangular building. That's the core. Straight up, window wall, the easiest system that you could actually build. It doesn't wow you. It's nice on the inside, but it's not over the top. And then even the lanais, they're not over the top. This building is incredibly efficient. And it was by Studio Gang. They did an amazing job looking at it as an efficient building. That's the way it was brought up. Efficiencies. Again, you always look at square and rectangular plates. They're the most efficient thing out there. You know, nowadays people look at 75%. That's what I've typically seen. How can we get to 85%? That's the key number. If you can get 85%, prices are going to go way down. Size of floor plates. This is something that Mike and I have worked on a couple times in the past where, you know, how can you keep it under a certain size? Because you want to be able to pour once. You don't want to break the pours up. Fast, fast, fast. Timing is everything. And then, you know, reducing the corridors. Again, on the left picture, that is actually Aqua. That's their floor plate. On the right picture, that's a project down in, I think it was in San Francisco, and that's 47 floors of that. I mean, I don't know how much that project cost, but incredibly inefficient. Lanais, everyone loves them, but they're incredibly expensive. So you got, again, this is part of the design where, do you want a lanai? Maybe some have lanais, some don't, some have Juliets, some have awning windows. This becomes an architectural element if they use it right with the right architect. But definitely this is something that is an expensive part of a project. Working with interior spaces. So the two pictures here actually it's the Line Hotel in LA. I stayed there a couple months ago, and it's a repurposed building. All tunnel form, it's just raw walls. It's actually pretty cool. And it seems to work. It was an apartment building. They ripped everything out. They made it nice, and the idea is to repurpose it back to condos in the years to come. So again, you just got to think innovative on the interior finishes. You don't have to go cheap, but a good interior designer is going to find something that's cost effective and make it look great. Make it sort of the new modern look that everyone likes today. In fact, that one quote up there was from a local interior designer. When I tried value engineering a whole bunch of stuff out on a project, she yelled at me, and it's a great quote saying every project deserves good architecture. You just got to find it. And then partnerships, probably the most important part. Sitting here, I heard the word risk mentioned so many times, and it's so true. Usually the banks don't want to take risks, so they push on the developer. The developer doesn't want to take risks, he puts on the contractor. So then the contractor doesn't want to, or the contractor that has to bear the risk ups his price. So risk is money. So how do you actually reduce risk, which then in turn reduces money? Through smart design. That's the biggest thing that I've seen over the years. Again, the partnerships is to expedite design, pricing, construction, as well as expedite approvals. This is the major list this is the team that we feel that could help get us to the goal of building at this cost. You know, working with the state, DPP, you know, land costs, permits, financing, those are key elements that all help projects. For developers, you know, JV partnerships between developers that don't want to take on the complete project and funding it. Public-private or private-public, I've heard that mentioned a couple times today, but it's key. How can you work together and split the risk that helps out, entices developers that want to do this? General contractors, they control the price, they control the market, they control the subs. Here in Hawaii, I learned, I've been here for 15 years, this market is not the deepest market out there. There's only a couple qualified subcontractors and general contractors that could build these buildings. And the other ones, the mainland won't come. I've tried enticing glazers all the time to come here. They're done. They don't want to come to Hawaii because they find it high risk, you know, low reward. So we have to work with what we got, and because of that, partnerships is what will get us there. Unions, another one. We need the labor. They've been helping us through the years, you know, getting on our projects, getting people on the project site, getting, you know, quality people out there and training them correctly. So we have to work with the unions. And then, you know, lastly, the architects, although they're the first, but the architects and designers. Get them on board, get them to believe, and we could design something and hit our marks. So.
All right.
Thanks, Mike. And thank you, Senator Chang, and everyone else involved with this conference. As a local contractor, I work for Albert T. Kobayashi Inc. I'm born and raised in Hawaii. And so we do all of our work in Hawaii. We're 100% invested here. We do all types of different projects. Housing, high-end, low-end, student housing, senior housing, educational facilities. We do a lot of private work, but the one thing we're seeing, as many of you know, and that's why I think we had the longest time slot, was cost of construction is very high here. So I'll talk a little bit about it. I know I'd like to thank Mike. He took up all the time, so I'm not a public speaker. So I only have 5 minutes, so I thought it was 30. I'm very happy about this.
20.
So super happy. So first off, a little bit of background. I know a lot of you in the audience might be familiar with construction costs, but as a construction company, as a contractor, we deal with what we call in the marketplace hard costs. There are soft costs as well. That would be the cost of the land, design costs, marketing, legal, permits, due diligence, etc. But what we focus on as a contractor is the hard costs. So you heard some of the previous presenters discuss, if for a $300,000 sales price, what would the hard costs be as a part of that after you take away all the soft costs? I think, and I'll get to it in conclusion, but I think that depending on how a deal is structured, it's going to be for us on a $300,000 sales price, we're going to have to spend between $150,000 and maybe $250,000, depending on the partnerships we have for the hard costs. So the hard cost consists of a variety of things. In simplistic form, it's labor. That's in Hawaii, we're a strong union state, so we have unionized labor. Materials, which I'll discuss a little bit more, but almost all the materials come from outside of the state of Hawaii. Equipment, subcontractor trades that are specialists, like electricians and plumbers and different trades that specialize in different parts of the work. And there's some indirect costs like taxes and bonds and insurance and overhead and profit. Okay, so cost estimating basics. When we're asked to put together, like one of the questions Senator Chang asked was, how much does this cost? So when we're asked to put together an estimate for a project, we as a contractor use 3 different components. Historical costs, which would be similar types of projects done in the marketplace in Hawaii. The subcontractor or the contractor marketplace, which is asking the different trades and vendors for actual pricing on what they think things will cost, and obviously project-specific quantities and specifications. So for this scenario, one of the challenges that I personally face when people ask me what would this cost is that third part, the project-specific quantities and specifications. You know, we don't have a specific site yet. We don't have specific details. So it is difficult, and there's a lot of fluctuation variance, which I'll discuss, and difficult for me to put a specific price to it. But we do have historical cost data and other things that allow us to give us a target. So for a typical project such as this, which would be a kind of high-density housing project of an affordable nature, this would be a typical construction cost breakdown. So for those of you who aren't familiar with construction, there's many different components. There's many different trades and up to, larger projects, 500 plus workers on site. So I kind of broke it down into the general types of construction. The site work would be the foundation and everything underground. That's about 5%. Structure would be the concrete or steel and everything to make the building stand up. That's about 25%. Facade and enclosure, that would be your roofing, your windows, your glass, everything on the outside to kind of keep the building waterproof. That's typically around 10%. The interior finishes, that's your cabinets, your flooring, your ceilings, walls, everything. That's about 20%. Mechanical, electrical, vertical transportation, that would be elevators and staffing equipment and miscellaneous. So that's a typical cost breakdown. The reason I share this is that what's important is that when we talk about trying to make a project financially feasible, there are certain parts in this diagram that we can really work on. There's certain parts that we cannot. Something like the site work and the structure, you can get some efficiency in a design or by working with a certain site, but a lot of times you're given what you're given. But when it comes to the interior finishes, the facade, as Mike touched on, there's a lot of opportunity there to find efficiency or cost savings. Other cost components that factor into when we put together an estimate and what it takes to build a building, the land. Something's been floated out there, whether the land will be provided or not. I think that's a huge cost that's a huge variable for a project. Parking, as Mike touched on, if parking is required or not. Green space, which would be landscaping, parks, trees, amenity decks. Air conditioning. This is a sensitive topic. I mean, air conditioning is very important for quality of living, but it is a very costly component of construction. So that we would have to have a real discussion of if air conditioning is necessary in all of the spaces. Amenities, as we discussed, and nice. So when it comes to constructability and finding ways to get efficiency and to keep the costs as low as possible, we as a contractor always face short-term versus long-term decisions, and developers do that too. When it comes to durability and quality and things that, do you want this building to last for 10 years or 100 years? And sometimes it's worth paying more or less upfront to meet a budget. So when it comes to these different types of components of the construction, there's foundation, there's different types of foundations. Structural is a good example. You could have wood construction, concrete, and steel. Obviously, steel lasts the longest, probably the most expensive. Wood would be the cheapest, just like if you're building a house. With the facade, the same thing. If you build something out of concrete or metal stud framing, it would be much more affordable than building it with glass all the way around. And interior finishes, as I touched on. You can have high quality European or overseas cabinets. You can have much more affordable domestic or maybe from Asia type cabinets. So there's a bunch of variance and flexibility in your design, but that does drive construction costs heavily. Some other big factors that are out of our control as a general contractor, and this is key to this whole deal, is that when you find the land to build these types of buildings, these kind of developments, there's a huge risk there. Depending on if that site is very low to the seawater level, you're going to be in water very quickly. If it's an environmentally sensitive area or archaeologically sensitive area, I think there's a lot of different components there that can add cost. So when you're trying to get to a fixed $300,000 sales price, minimizing these risks and fluctuations is key to that. Some of the specific challenges we face in Hawaii, as many of you probably know, this is a tough state to do construction in. We have very minimal local materials. Almost everything is shipped in or flown in. And that add cost. So you're putting on shipping container costs to almost every type of construction material that comes in. We have very limited capacity in many different ways. Land, resources, even when the industry gets really busy, even we have challenges with skilled labor. We have really good unions, but we even have challenges when the construction market gets very busy. And so all of these factor into making Hawaii one of the top 5 construction costs states in the U.S. And that's a big factor in comparing us to Singapore and other areas on how affordable can we make these buildings. Some of the global construction trends that also affect Hawaii, as you guys know, tariffs, that's been a big thing. Tariffs, especially with China. A lot of our materials for affordable type development and construction projects do come from China or overseas. So with the current administration, and there's a lot of risk and uncertainty in the amount of tariffs and what they're placed on, there's a lot, in our marketplace, we see a huge amount of fluctuation. So with one example is quartz countertops. There's been anti-dumping lawsuits and other tariffs placed on it, and so prices for us have fluctuated up to 40%. So these are solid surface quartz countertops you get in most condominiums and apartment buildings these days, but the price has actually increased about 40% in the last year, just because of these tariffs and lawsuits taking place. So the keys to construction efficiency. Running out of time. Perfect. So keys to construction efficiency is, it's very different from what other people may say, what Mike may say, and other people in the audience may say, but for us as a contractor, you want to keep the price low, you got to be efficient, which doesn't necessarily mean it's pretty, doesn't necessarily mean it's big or fun, but for us, from my personal opinion, if you wanted to keep the cost down, you have to build it as typical and efficient as possible. So decisions would have to be made on what's worth spending money on, whether it's the facade or the architecture or the community spaces. Those kind of things will add cost, but smart decisions would need to be made by somebody. Material selections, as I mentioned, there's a wide variety of materials. You can select wood flooring, you can select carpet, you can select no flooring and just have bare concrete. There's a wide variety of materials. And obviously, if you make smart, efficient decisions, cost-effective decisions, that will keep the cost down. as I mentioned before, minimizing variables, unknown risks, especially with the site location is a big key to keeping the cost down. And lastly, creative partnerships. I think, let's see, so in conclusion, I would say as the contractor here in the room, and I know people probably have questions, I think some of the numbers thrown out by the financing guys would be difficult for us to achieve from a fully privately financed typical developer type project. We've done all types of projects, and I've looked at the numbers from a construction perspective. We'd probably have a hard time on a $300,000 sales price building it for $150,000 a unit, or $171,000, which is what I calculated from a guy from Bank of Hawaii's financing presentation. I think we would have to find ways to partner with different stakeholders, whether it be government or whether it be the land or the subcontractors across different industries. I think this is a difficult challenge for one industry to undertake. And this is coming from the construction guys. And I know that our costs are very high, and I think by getting efficiency in design and commitments from a lot of the companies here, we can bring costs down, but we're going to need partnerships with other stakeholders to really make this a success. I think that's all I had. Kept it short. Yeah.
Thank you. If you would join me in welcoming and thanking both Michael Vachio and Michael Young. And once again, apologize, we don't have time for questions, but please see both of them afterwards if you have questions. I think you could do an entire day on cost alone, how to keep these projects affordable. So please come up and ask your questions. Thank you.